publication, but if not, that's okay. You'll want to after this, maybe. Here, these are the Northwest Islands. French frigate is where the turtles are. Midway is up here. Curry is this amazing island, one of the wildest places on the planet. You can't get there by land, by air. You have to go in a ship, go through the reef. It's sort of like the old 19th century. Laysan and Lisiansky are big seabird populations. And so then you have the islands down here, and the two sets of islands are very, very different. There are very few people here. They're protected, and so you have literally millions of seabirds up there. And then you have relatively few down here in the main islands. Don't worry about the number of breeding pair of species, but one thing that's interesting is we estimate there's 6 million that are breeding, but there are 15 million of those species floating around. Because it can take a young 5 to even 10 years to learn how to feed and to be competent enough to find a mate, protect a nest, and raise young. You all know this. This is actually Manana Island. And it's really cool because inside there's a caldera. And it's got millions of millions of, not millions, it's got tens of thousands of shearwaters that nest in there. And then over here on the flanks, it's one of the biggest populations in the entire Pacific of a thing called the sooty tern, which I'll show you in a bit. And this is just right off of Sea Life Park. This is, I can't remember what this island's called, I'm trying to forget. We made a mistake of trying to attract albatrosses to it. And so if you were, about 10 years ago, you might have seen there were albatrosses, decoys out there, and someone put soundtracks. So if you got near the island, there were a bunch of birds going, ah, and not moving. I think there's some light out here, I don't know. And then the Air Force and the FAA got sort of annoyed because they didn't want more, and the Marines, they didn't want more big birds flying around that could hit their aircraft. This is Mukamanu. It's off of Kaneohe, the Marine base, and this is like being in Galapagos. Birds aren't afraid of you. And one reason they're not afraid of you is because it's really nasty to land. The lazy man does it by helicopter. Otherwise, you swim in when it's calm. If it's not calm, you get battered. But this is our best island. It's right off of Oahu, and it's pretty amazing that it survived. Kilauea Point on Kauai. I should have had a drink. This is a pretty neat place. This light used to, I don't know if it still does, it's a deserted lighthouse. When the Coast Guard pulled out, the Fish and Wildlife Service got it. And you can't do it now, but I was there once and for a reception. So we were sitting there drinking our wine, and the red-footed boobies would come past, and as the light went around, they looked like cinders or ashes, or cinders, like burning cinders as they flew by and the light went around. And then the sooty wedge-tailed shearwaters would land and run past you, and you had to occasionally duck because they would fly right at your face. Two of the other islands, important seabird islands, Laysan, which is in the Northwest Islands, and I'll show you what happened to that, some of the history of that. It's probably the most devastated place on the planet. They introduced rabbits there and guinea pigs, and they died out only after the two of them had eaten every bit of green stuff on the entire island, and then they starved. So they destroyed a palm forest, and they basically, it's taken a century to recover. Mauna Loa, we have these beautiful petrels, I'll show you them in a second, which are mountain petrels. They live only, some of them live in the caldera for Haleakala, some of them live a good way up Mauna Loa. There are these birds that go 500,000 miles out to sea, and then they come and fly up to safe areas. I think this is Lanai. Again, this is another area where these petrels nest. It's heavy fern, there's almost always fog, and they're incredible to watch because they have a courtship. They come in at night and it's foggy, and the male and the female fly wingtip to wingtip. And as far as I can tell, the female's saying, if you're good enough to keep up with me, you're probably good enough to have my babies. And so they'll go into these huge acrobatics in the dark, and they manage not to get killed too often. Lace-sand albatross, how many people have been to Kaina Point? They're not there now, but the last 20 years they've moved in. The Air Force really didn't like this because they're basically at one end of a runway. But they've been increasing in numbers, and they're kind of cute when they're young. But you don't want to be bitten. This is another albatross. These nest only on one island here, the lower islands. They're mostly up at Midway and the others, and they tend to find the main islands probably too hot. But you'll see the densities of what they nest. Here's that mountain bird I was talking about, the Hawaiian petrel. It's endangered, and it nests 5,000 to 10,000 feet up in the mountains. They probably used to nest at sea level, but a variety of bad things have happened to them. Red-footed booby, you can see them along the coast, flying out to about a half mile, or you can see them in Sea Life Park. They rescued a bunch, and I think they're now breeding. If you ever encounter one of these, the bill hurts like hell. But more importantly, if the tail starts to go up, do not stand behind it. And if you do not open your mouth. Tropic birds, masked boobies, these are again in the Northwest Islands. Frigate birds, you can see them over Honolulu a lot of the time. They fly over the mountains. And these guys, if you walk out the door and you're lucky and you look up, you'll see white terns. And again, they have this courtship thing where you got to keep up with me, and if you want to mate. And so you'll see these high-speed acrobatics going on. And they nest on little teeny rocks or branches like this, probably where rats can't get out to them. And I don't know how the egg stays there, but once the young hatch, it looks like a twiggy bird, and they have these claws that just dig into the branch, and it basically takes a gale or almost a hurricane to knock them off. So, as I said in the book, or the paper, there are 3 stages of what's happened with seabirds here. Exploitation and indifference, conservation, and then restoration of ecosystems. And they've overlapped to a certain extent, but they really are 3 different levels. The Native Hawaiians are really interesting. They may have been among the first peoples to actually manage seabirds. The petrel, the mountain petrel, the young are full of fat. And if you like fish oil, they taste really, really good. And there was not much in the way of fat in the traditional diet. And so the Ali'i would send folks up to grab the young and bring them down to the coast for dinner. And to facilitate this, they started excavating little burrows or lava tubes to improve the nesting sites. Unfortunately, that was the good side. And there's another one that's been shaped by humans to have a petrel nest in it. And so we find a lot of petrels in these old structures. So it's very effective. Unfortunately, there's not much to eat up there. The adults are not very fatty. They don't taste good unless you're a cat, as opposed to the young. So when they sent people up to grab the young, the guys who were doing the grabbing would kill a whole bunch of adults and eat them because they weren't valuable. And so that's a sort of a yin and yang of management. But the main thing is it was way ahead of